Yeah.
Okay. Paul, other than Paddy, have we got any members of the public wishing to speak?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, well, we'll start with the public session that Paddy wants to talk to us about. At the moment, Paddy, you've got up to 15 minutes.
I will take no more than 5, Mike. I don't like normal meetings any more than you do.
I knew there was a reason I liked you.
Yeah. I'm speaking in my
Andy.
capacity as Treasurer of Buckingham Community Hall Association, not as a councillor. I'll give a potted history of how we got here and the impact of the legal position on your debate tonight. The history. The building was built in the early 1980s and the freehold owned by AVDC. After construction, a 100-year full repairing lease was granted to Buckingham Town Council, and Buckingham Town Council granted a 100-year full repairing sublease over the majority of the building to what became the registered but unincorporated charity, Buckingham Community Centre Association. Because the charity was unincorporated, it could not hold property in its own name, and a convoluted arrangement with named individuals who were indemnified by the charity trustees was required. Both leases were on a peppercorn rent. A decade or so, AVDC transferred the freehold to Aylesbury Estates Limited. This had no effect on the head lease held by Buckingham Town Council or the sublease held by the lease trustees on behalf of Buckingham Community Centre Association. In 2013-14, I was the trustee and treasurer of Buckingham Community Centre Association and became concerned about the trustees' personal liability for full repair of the building for the next 60 years. The centre could not possibly generate sufficient money to pay for big repairs, e.g. roof renewal, and we as trustees needed to remove that liability. Just resigning would not be in the long term solve the problem, as potential future trustees would be deterred by the very same reasoning. Since the original leases were granted, the government introduced a form of charity called a Charitable Incorporated Organisation, CIO for short, which could hold property in its own name and the trustees were not personally liable for debts. The trustees decided to approach the town council, explaining that they couldn't continue with the current lease arrangements and requested that the lease be transferred to a new CIO, Buckingham Community Hall Association, and renegotiate at the same time to take away the full repairing element too. It was necessary to remove the full repairing element as, looking forward to the next 60 years of the lease, no responsible charity trustee could run a business knowing that at some point in the future it would probably be unable to meet its legal requirements, legal commitments. That request was granted and the lease renegotiated. Prior to this, under the old lease, there was an agreement with Buckingham Town Council that they would assist with running costs and 50% of capital expenditure incurred by the community centre up to agreed limits. With the removal of the full repair obligation, the need for the Town Council's assistance for capital matters was dropped. Recently, the Town Council bought the freehold from Aylesbury Estates for £50,000. It was only this cheap because of the 60 years yet to run on the sublease to Buckingham Community Hall Association. If that lease hadn't existed, the cost would have been millions. The purchase of the freehold does not in any way affect the sublease. It does give you more rights over the council chamber part. That is where we are today. As regards item on the agenda, item 1.6 in your minute pack is misleading. Commercial leases are normally full repairing leases. The original one between AVDC and Buckingham Town Council was, and the Town Council has always been ultimately been responsible for full repair. Under the old lease, they would have to pay if the trustees couldn't, or if the underlease was surrendered for any reason. Item 4.3, 1.8, 141 on your pack is more misleading. It's not been copied in entirety and could easily be misconstrued. The fuller wording continues, not to do or suffer to be done on the premises any act or thing which shall or may be or become a nuisance, damage or annoyance or inconvenience to the council or adjoining tenants, nor allow anything to be done on the premises which might invalidate any policy of insurance, etc., etc. It's referring to your enjoyment of your part of the building, the Mayor's Chamber. It's not referring to the wider council as a legal entity. You can review the lease and request a renegotiation, but the trustees of Buckingham Community Hall Association are bound by the charity's objectives and cannot take any action that would be to the charity's detriment. I don't know what potential changes you may consider requesting, but unless they are neutral or in Buckingham Community Hall Association's favour, they could not be entertained under charity law. As regards 1.3 on your agenda, the 50% requirement is worded that you are seeking Buckingham Community Hall Association assistance for your capital projects for the building. Helping the town council with expenditure would be illegal for the trustees to agree to. I think the original intention of the idea mentioned in minute 393/14 was actually the other way round. How can the town council help Buckingham Community Hall Association? That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paddy. That's quite useful. Has Paul got a copy of what you've just read out?
No. All he needs to put in the minutes is Paddy Collins explained the legal position. Full stop.
Okay.
Nothing more need to be said.
I found it useful the way that you put it. All right. Thanks very much. Anybody got any questions or anything to ask?
I can't answer questions. It's a public session.
Well,
Under your standing
okay.
orders.
Okay. Thought I'd give them the chance. Thanks then,
Okay.
Paddy.
Cheerio.
We'll start the meeting proper in that case then.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. As usual, I'm asking Paul to indicate those wishing to speak because my system here doesn't bring up all the names and that. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No.
No.
No. Okie dokie. Thanks very much then. Any declarations of interest? I'm assuming that all the community hall trustees are declaring an interest.
Yeah.
On item 10.
Can I declare an interest as well? I have to declare an interest on the community board in the sense that if we make an application at some point as a member of the community board, there could be a vote on how that money is spent. So it's better that I declare an interest. It's not a prejudicial interest, but an interest.
And Andy, I think you had your hand up, did you?
Yes, because I'm on the Community Centre Association committee.
Yeah, okay.
Likewise for me, Chairman Martin.
I think I'm right in saying that it's the Mayor, Councillor Mahi, Councillor Bloomfield and Councillor Try. Paddy, of course, is not actually at the meeting. Is that right? Our trustees?
Yes.
Good.
We still got a hand from Lisa and a hand from Councillor Harvey and Councillor Hirons.
Councillor Harvey first then.
Presumably what you've just discussed also applies to the report about grants. So if there's anybody here who is on a body in a board capacity or any of the organisations that the town council is likely to be funding grants to, then they too must declare an interest. So that accounts for you, Mike, for example, with the old jail.
You're very faint, John, but I got your point. What I was going to go on to that, but I was trying to get the matter with the community centre sorted.
Okay, all right. Okay, you can't hear me very well though.
That's better.
Okay, all right.
Certainly, as a member and a trustee of Buckingham Old Jail Trust, I would declare an interest if that arises on the grants review.
Councillor O'Donoghue had a hand, and Councillor Bloomfield, and Councillor Morgan and Councillor Hirons.
I thought Councillor Hirons was next.
Okay, mine's only a simple one, but as I'm on the parochial church council of, I have an interest in the holiday club.
Right. Thank you very much. Councillor O'Donoghue.
Yeah, thank you. I am a member of staff at Buckingham Youth Clubs Limited, who is one of the 3-year recipient of money from the town council. And as we're discussing the grants applications and the possibility of the 3 years going over to the 4 years, I ought to just say that I'm a member of staff there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Paul?
Councillor Bloomfield and Mordew.
Okay, Councillor Bloomfield.
Terry, you're muted.
He's going to say he's on the Old Jail Trust board.
No,
so-
well, no, at the minute I'm not. I'm treasurer,
not?
but I'm not a trustee. I am going to rejoin, but not at this moment in time. I have not got. I'm just a treasurer of the old jail. I'm not a trustee.
Thank you. Who else was it? Was it Councillor Try?
Councillor Mordew.
Councillor Mordew, sorry.
Any matters relating to the Swan Community Hub?
Right. Okay.
And Councillor Newell.
I'm also on the PCC of the parish church.
And Councillor Harvey.
What I'm wondering, therefore, is how many councillors are left to actually be able to vote on item 8, the grants review report? Because it seems to me that most people here who've declared an interest, there's not many of us left, are there? I mean, am I about the only one? Because if that's the case, we're not quorate.
I haven't got any interest on that.
I haven't.
Yes, you have, Andy.
On the community
hall.
Community centre.
But that's not the
Community hall
grant
was-
review, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, well then.
All right, that leaves
only
me
you
and
then.
Robin. Anybody
You and Robin.
else?
The only thing I've got an interest on the agenda is the community board matter.
Well, you
just
mentioned that,
declare-
Robin. Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
but nothing else. So I can vote. That means 2 of us.
Oh, that's That's
Councillor O'Donoghue has a hand.
Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. I guess because we're not talking about the youth centre being given a grant in this actual meeting, we're just talking about the process of it, then my interest wouldn't hold when it comes to discussing the actual agreements and things like that, because we're not actually allocating money tonight to the youth centre. It's just a process.
I think I can see the sense of that, and that might apply to others as well.
Yeah.
Let's just sort it when we get to it, shall we?
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Okay, that's got to be the longest declaration of interests in living memory. That has. Right, thank you for that. Then minutes of the last meeting held on the 29th of June. They were received at full council. Is everybody happy to approve them?
Yeah, agreed.
I'll take that as yes. Nobody's.
Yeah.
Yes.
And minutes of the communications strategy group. There are 3 meetings: the 2nd of July, 30th of July, and the 3rd of September, which we are just to receive. Okay.
Yep.
Somebody say no. All right. Action report then. Appendix A. Anybody got any comments?
No.
Grants review is on there and we've got it on the agenda. I'll take that as a no then.
Well, Councillor Hirons has a hand.
Yes, Councillor Hirons.
Yes, I'm just concerned that this is there's no accounts on this. Usually we have an up-to-date position of where the expenditure is. No mention.
We're actually just discussing the action report. So can we finish discussing that and then I'll mention the accounts? And you turned your sound off when you swore at me just then, fortunately.
I didn't.
Anything else on the action report?
Oh, Councillor Harvey.
Oh, Councillor Harvey then.
Yes, the first item, 818, it says to be reviewed again in October 2020, the complaints, compliments and FOI request. We don't seem to have that on the agenda. Can you hear me?
Deadlines for November. That's what I'm looking at. So they're reviewing
Yes,
in
an
October,
update
reporting in November.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. That's a bit confusing, but
sense?
okay. I assumed that when it says to review again in October, we'd have it on the October agenda's meeting, but I suppose. Okay, fine. All right. Yeah, I've got that. I've got my wires crossed there. Fine. I'm a month ahead. Yeah.
Finish?
Don't worry. Yes.
I'm taking it that they're reviewing up to October and reporting to November. Move on then. Community board funding. Paul, do you want to say something?
Okay. Yeah, so this is to highlight the fact that funding is available through the community board. I did send an email around councillors last week, reminded councillors opportunity to join the subgroup. Several councillors have replied to me and I'm putting them in touch with the board coordinator. So it's not a recommendation that we do anything, apply for any funding in particular, but we are if the council wants to apply for funding, then we would need to start thinking about what we might want to apply for. It's likely that funding ideas are going to come up through those subgroups, so working through the subgroups would be key. I can see hands from Councillor Harvey and Stutchbury and Newell.
Councillor Stutchbury.
It would be probably prudent that we put this ideas back through committees like environment and events, because there's youth projects for events and there's environment, green open spaces, because I think the discussion will come from those committees, what projects are likely to be benefit, and after the first meetings of these subgroups it might be easier to get a feel of what's likely to gain support.
I don't think we've got time, have we? Don't we have to endorse proposals on the 5th of October and then get them in?
Not necessarily for all the budgets, but certainly for that one. And obviously, the longer we take, the quicker the money will go.
Well, in which case...
Have we got time to put it to all the committees then, Paul?
It depends on which subgroup which of the budgets we apply to. Possibly is the unhelpful answer. Councillor Newell has a hand.
Yeah, we've already talked about the BMX skate park for Lace Hill, and I'd like to put that forward for funding.
I agree with that.
Yeah, so would I.
Yeah, so would I.
That's a good idea, Ruth.
Any other comments?
Councillor Harvey.
Councillor Harvey then.
Yeah, a couple of ideas. One is exploring the crossing by the King's Head, a permanent crossing. I know they keep saying it would come into Section 6 for the Morton Road Phase 3, but we don't want Morton Road Phase 3. We want the crossing. So that's one option. Another option is to provide some toilets at the far end of Bourton Park, near the car park there, so that would allow young people to make more use of those facilities in the summer. And another possibility would be to erect a stretch tent, large enough to put some people underneath and some picnic chairs, whatever, perhaps somewhere in the heartlands. Not entirely sure where, maybe near the Green Bridge, and also add in an electricity point so that we could possibly get performances there some point in the future. Could get some, people strumming guitars, playing music in the park at that point. That it also fulfills my need, I think, for some better and more outdoor indoor spaces. As it looks like the virus is obviously still very much with us, surprise, surprise. So therefore, some spaces in which families can collect together in the open air, I think, are really important. Hence the idea of a stretch tent. If you don't know what I mean by a stretch tent, Google it and you'll see what I mean by a stretch tent. But basically, a large canopy that would create some space under cover for people to meet in.
Councillor Stutchbury has a hand.
Okay.
Hello.
Just before you start, Robin, could I don't know whether it's just me, but John, you were very you were faint and your image, your sound was faint and your image was a bit iffy.
His broadband, it keeps like cutting out, so his internet's not good, and
he sounded like he was in a goldfish bowl
or drunk. Yeah.
Okay, should we let John play with that? Yeah. Councillor Stutchbury.
It could be worth John, Lisa and I attended event down at the skate park. Now they're going to uplift the skate park, but there'll be things within that skate park for the youth that won't be funded through the Section 106. And it could be that some of the nice things to have that they want might not be funded. And it might be worth applying for some additional funding for some of the nice to have things that won't get with a revamp, which is will come through the Section 106 agreement, which is funding that. It's just be worth adding it for discussion, because it's the time to put it in is when they're putting it in, isn't it? Not again afterwards, it could be that there's some things could be joint funded to make sure it's a better facility and more long lasting. I mean, they have repaired bits now, thankfully, but I think that's something we could look at. It was something young people actually were very vocal about. So I think that's a good thing to do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Councillor Hirons.
Councillor Hirons.
Can I just clarify whether one of the committees is for HS2, full stop, or HS2 and East West Rail? Because when I was asked, I put my name down for HS2 and East West Rail, and I assumed it was one committee. In the agenda, it just refers to HS2.
Sorry, it's HS2 and East West Rail.
Yeah.
Good. Good. Okay. Was that clear then, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Chair, did you
Anybody
hear
else?
what I said? It's me again. Did you hear what I said last time?
Yeah, stretch tent.
Can you hear me now?
You're talking
Yeah.
about your list, John. Your list of
Yes.
yeah, I think we got most of that. I don't
Okay.
know if Nina did. That's possibly the one that we need to ensure. Got it. Nina, did you?
Yeah, Nina's nodding.
Okay.
Just nodding.
Can you hear me better now?
Silently nodding.
Yes.
Chair, can I just add to what Councillor Harvey said? Just to say that the next stage of this will be, we'll put something together for full council in a couple of weeks, just with a few reflections on things that members have come up with tonight. So that might be the quickest way of taking it forward. So some of those things might be easier than others. So we'll come up with something some slightly clearer recommendations based on what members have come up with and other things for full
Yes.
council.
That sounds good. And if I might simply add that following on from my days on the community board's predecessor, the local area forum, we go for everything we think we can get.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Should we move on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, then item 7, COVID related grant changes. Paul, again, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, so just to highlight that we did contact all our grant recipients after the lockdown. Some of them have spent the grants as intended. Some of them came back saying that would be difficult for them. We've worked with each of them, come up with a set of proposals to change some of them. So those recommendations would be all the recommendations to change or do things differently. To highlight that the Swan Community Hub have actually asked for more money, but for a project which absolutely responds well to the situation caused by COVID. And we're recommending, even though Buckingham Churches together have come back asking for less than they had to start with, just for £300, it looks like what they're asking to do with it would be clearly promoting Christianity rather than doing a social outreach bit of it. So we'd recommend not to give funding for that, because that would go against the equality policy.
Okay, so if we took those first 3 recommendations one at a time, then can we agree that to grant Lace Hill Residents Association £900 and Swan Community Club 1,000 in line with their original suggestions? Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep.
And the additional money for Swan Community Hub, everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Totally.
And
Councillor Morgew's got a hand up.
Sorry.
I want to re-emphasise that I abstain on that one.
Well, we're not actually going to a vote, so it doesn't, unless somebody calls for a vote. And the third one being that we do not grant Buckingham Churches Together Holiday Club funding, even the reduced amount. And everybody agreed to that?
Councillor Collins has a hand on that.
Geraldine?
Hi, well, I can't see where we get this, that it's only on Christianity things, because it's actually on the children's activities and things like that. So they're not just Christian based, they're all activities for the children.
Councillor Harvey has a hand.
Did you want to answer that one point, Paul?
Yeah, I think that the challenge is the content of it is clearly promoting Christianity. That was the judgment of it.
That was why we turned it down initially, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if members are uncomfortable with that, then the way forward, I guess, would be to delegate a couple of people to actually go and look at it themselves and then come back to either full council or resources rather than take a view here based on when presumably most councillors haven't actually seen the content, so it's hard to make a judgment. Councillor Collins, Councillor Stutchbury, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Hirons all have hands up.
No, Councillor Harvey was first, I think.
Just to say that I did have a look at one of the videos, and it does feature evangelical Christian songs, and therefore I entirely agree with what the town clerk is recommending. I do not see a need to delay this vote at all. We're not in the business of funding as our overall policies as a secular organisations that are promoting one religion, and those videos do.
Thank you. Councillor Hirons?
Yes, that may be true, but so the rest of the pack wasn't to do with that. So it's you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater by saying because one thing is against the policy, the pack given to each child. And I think, as far as I'm aware, the rest of it could not be construed in that way. And therefore, I think you're being a bit harsh, getting rid of the whole thing just because of the content of the videos.
Who else was it?
Councillor Collins.
Councillor Collins?
I would agree with what Paul says on that the packs are for the children's activities. We've always granted them in the past, and we haven't not granted them on evangelical content. So I don't know why it's coming up now, but the majority of the content for the Holiday Club is just children's activities, and that is not religious based at all.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Councillor Harvey has a hand again.
In which case we should see the packs of information and also see a breakdown of the costs. I mean, it depends on how much money the videos cost. The videos might have cost nothing at all. They were produced perhaps by a volunteer, who knows, and maybe there were no production costs. I think we need to see where the budget has gone and where it's been spent, and actually see the examples of the materials produced. That's the only way to make a rational decision here. The fact of the matter is we are a secular organisation, and we do not fund activities that are promoting one single religion, and clearly the video that I saw does.
Councillor Mahi has a hand, and Councillor Collins.
Thank you, but there is quite a breakdown of what they were spending the money on in the report.
Yes, there was.
You're right.
Sorry, who was next?
Councillor Mahi and Councillor Collins and Councillor Stutchbury.
I don't see why we are objecting. We are, after all, a Christian country, with the predominant religion in Britain is Christianity. The Queen is the head of the church and is crowned at Westminster Abbey. I don't know where we're going with this. If no one else has approached us, then why are we objecting to being Christian? Is there something wrong in doing that?
Thank you. Who's next?
Councillor Collins, then Councillor Stutchbury.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We have to be minded that the officers draft reports in a responsible way in accordance with the council's guidance. We have to be minded where we sit and where we attend, and what our allegiance is when discussing these things. If it can be proved beyond a doubt that those elements which raised concerns within the report are not of are different to a secular nature, which is our aim, then we should review it again. But unless the officer's report is faulty and was drafted wrongly, which I don't believe it is, we should perhaps agree it. And it has very little to do with who the Queen is. It has very little to do with any other religion. And we have been given loads of money over the years to different churches in the town based upon projects that they wish to pursue. And I think we could go back and defend that. So unless someone's suggesting we should review it again, in which case we aren't over its religious content, which makes a rather large issue of a procedural question, should we not just agree this? And if they've want to come back to us again, that is their right.
We've got council.
Geraldine, did you want to speak again?
Yes, please. I mean, most of the activities are run by volunteers. They're just sort of painting activities and all of that. But what I wanted to say was the children that attend there are not just Church of England. They're from all the religions in Buckingham. They're not just, they're from the Methodist, wherever. It's all churches are involved. It's not children just from church, it's from the schools, underprivileged families. The kids are drafted in from all sorts of areas, not just Church of England.
Councillor Mordew and Councillor O'Donoghue.
Councillor Mordew.
You know, we do have a number of religions in Buckingham, and we tend to think of the other religion as being for Islam, but there are Zoroastrian for one person. There's Catholics, there are Methodists, there are all sorts of churches, and what I'd like to see is the evidence that other children from other faiths are allowed or excluded. If they're excluded, my mind is quite simply made up that they shouldn't get any money. However, if they have looked after children from other religions and haven't asked them what religion they are, then I'm more interested in the fact that it is something that's been offered to children during the school holidays.
Thank you. Councillor O'Donoghue.
I'm muted. So two things. One is my son, when he was younger, much younger, he went to the holiday club for the week one, and he didn't enjoy it because it was heavily you know, kind of pushed at the end of each session, singing Christian songs and things like that. But that's only because we're a non-religious family. That's why he didn't really enjoy it. But if anybody wants to have a look through the craft packs, I'm more than happy to be one of those lookers to see what activities are being put out. But the fact that they have done 85 craft packs, I think, is to be commended. They've obviously kept children occupied. One of the questions about other children from other faiths not being welcome there, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that any families from a different religion probably wouldn't apply for their child to go to there, but there wouldn't be any exclusion of any other religions. I couldn't imagine any religious organisation doing that.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Yes.
Councillors Duxbury and Harvey and Collins have their hands.
Okay.
I've listened carefully to what everybody said, and there is definite strong views from one side on that they should get the money. Can I propose that we don't make a decision on this tonight, and that we do undertake to look at it dispassionately against the concerns raised and the positive views raised, and then review it again, because it would be wrong to make a decision now, because there's certain questions being raised by members who feel that it is very supportive to the community and that the religion aspect is very small. But we are a secular council and not a political council, but I would suppose that we review this again against our own criteria. And I note Councillor Donahew's suggestion to look at it dispassionately is a reasonable suggestion, and bring it back thereafter based upon the findings. To rush it through tonight, I think, and cause a long argument over something which could be easily digested better would be wrong. So I propose that we do that.
Well, we had originally reviewed it against our criteria and declined it, haven't we? But okay, Councillor Harvey.
Just to say again that the town clerk has looked through the materials, and I think this is an issue of trusting our town clerk. He has said very clearly that the primary focus of the videos that were produced were religious worship and evangelism. Now, if the craft packs are simply neutral, nice colouring things and paints, whatever, fine. But if they're pictures of I don't know, of scenes from the Bible to be coloured in or whatever, then again, that would be regarded as being evangelism. I have nothing against at all what the churches want to do. They can do what they want to do, and that's fine with me. And I don't even suspect that they are discriminatory in the children that they accept. I'm sure they don't. That's not the issue. The issue that we, as a secular council, are not in the business of promoting one religion or one political view or one set of ethics and so on, other than what we are bound up by being part of local government. That's the simple fact. And we simply can't be in the business of funding activities whose prime purpose and primary focus, according to the town clerk who has looked at this material, has said, I'm prepared to go along with Councillor Stutchbury's proposal that we belay this decision, but the policy remains. We are a secular council. We do not fund evangelism or religious worship. That's entirely for the churches to fund for themselves.
Okay, Councillor Collins.
I just want to answer Howard. The holiday club is open to any child in Buckingham. They don't take religion into account. Any child, any parent can ask for their child to go. It's a holiday club just for children. It's not dependent on what religion you are or what background you're from. So I hope that clarifies that. And I've seen a lot of the activity packs like face painting, just general things like that. So if that helps.
Well, I get the general impression that we stay with the policy decision we took when we looked at grants, and therefore decline it from what most people have said. I think is that agreed?
No.
No. Is this a new policy? Because
let's take it to a vote then.
Before.
No, it's not a new policy at all.
No.
Why have you always granted it in the past?
No, we'll take it to a vote then. Those in favour of withholding the money, please show.
Before we go to that, there was a proposal to delay it, which was
call for the vote
seconded.
now.
The vote's gone.
Right, so I'm going to call out names just so that I make sure I've got the right number. So votes for, I've got councillors Smith.
This is votes for withholding the money.
Is that Robin's proposal?
No, but it's been ignored.
Oh, I seconded it though.
Yeah, I know. But
Go on then, Paul, read them out.
Okay, so this is votes for withholding the money. Councillor Smith, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Try. I think that's everyone. That's three.
Those in favour of paying the money?
Councillor Bloomfield, Collins, Mordew, Hirons, Mahi, that's 5.
Any abstentions?
Councillor O'Donoghue and Stutchbury and Newell. That's 3. So motion carried.
Yeah,
no, sorry, motion not carried. So funding agreed.
I make that then that 5 in favour of paying them the £300.
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Are people voting when there's a conflict of interest here? Are some people voting here who are actually members of the church and are communicant members of the churches that are involved in producing this holiday club? Because I would regard that as a conflict of interest.
I did not speak and I abstained from voting.
Yeah, any other person who's a communicant member of the church that organises this cannot be voting on this.
I'm not.
I think it's only if you're on the PCC.
Right, who's on the PCC then?
I don't organise it either.
Who's on the PCC?
Me. We declared at the beginning of the meeting, didn't we?
Councillor Hirons?
Yes, I'm on the PCC.
So therefore you can't vote on this then?
It's wrong.
Okay, so I'll come off. Doesn't make any difference.
It does to the principle.
It does look.
Point of information, please. Can I have some advice from the town clerk? If you've declared an interest at the beginning of the meeting about a subject on the agenda, then you proceed to actually vote on it. Contrary to what you've declared, is that a breach of the code of conduct? And if there was a formal proposal on the table and seconded, and what wasn't taken forward, is the vote which we've taken sound?
In terms of the second question, my understanding would be that's down to the chairman, because the standing orders do give the chair a good deal of leeway in terms of what's taken and when it's taken. In terms of if someone's voted when they've got a declaration of interest, I would never give advice on that. Actually, it's a matter for members to decide when they vote. Obviously, if you've made a declaration of interest, then you should. It depends. It depends on the context a bit, I guess. I think Councillor Hiram's decision to remove his vote, having clearly declared an interest member of the PCC, is an appropriate decision, certainly.
Okay, so second question for you, Town Clerk. As the legal officer of the council, is it your job to advise the council when it's acting in accordance with its own standing orders? And I'm grateful for the explanation of the chairman's right to rule. That's a fair decision. What I'm uneasy about is you've given explanation of declarations of interest, but you haven't ruled on it you've left it to the members. The trouble with that is I've abstained from the vote, so I'm not prejudiced. But had I voted in that, I could have voted in a vote of which would breach a further code of conduct in another place, because would have voted knowing that people had declared a prejudicial interest, and that would have contravened the code of conduct. So I'm sorry to be thus, but I do see
that's hypothetical, Robin. Let's not bring that didn't happen, so we needn't consider that. What's under consideration is whether or not people who had who declared an interest in the item voted. Well, we know who declared an interest. Did any of them vote?
The thing we should add, though, is clearly when you declare an interest, it then depends slightly on the matter, exactly what's being voted for. So Councillor Hiram's view is that because he's on the PCC, he has a direct kind of financial responsibility within the church. If Councillor Collins' view is that she doesn't have that direct responsibility, so she's not kind of legally responsible for the finances of the church, it could well be appropriate for her to take a different view.
Well, you could similarly argue that Councillor Hiram's being on the PCC probably had nothing to do with the holiday club anyway, and therefore he would be able to vote.
And members have a better understanding of where their responsibilities lie within the church and their links to this project than I would. Which is why members are responsible.
I therefore
for their
think that the vote can stand.
Do I move next business, Chairman?
Second that.
You can move it, but it hasn't been agreed. I want to nail this one down. We're talking about £300 to Church's Holiday Club. Now I get it that there were 5 in favour of paying it, 3 opposed, and 3 abstentions. If that's right, then we pay the money and then we can move on.
Just to clarify, one of those votes in favour was withdrawn, so it's 4 in favour, and I'm presuming Councillor Hiram is abstaining now, so it's 4 in favour, 3 against.
Shall we do the vote again? Paul, do you want us to do the vote again?
If you wish.
Okay. Those in favour of not paying them, please show.
Which is Councillor Smith, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Try. So not paying, that's 3.
Thank you. Those in favour of paying them £300.
Councillor Bloomfield, Councillor Collins, Councillor Mordew, Councillor Mahi, that's 4.
4. And abstentions?
Councillor O'Donoghue, Councillor Hirons, Councillor Stutchbury. Councillor Newell, that's 4.
That's 4. So does that come down? Well, their abstentions. It's still 4 in favour of payment.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yes.
we pay them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then.
Sorry, point of order, Chair. Could I ask the town clerk to rule on whether that is a legal vote? Because I still maintain that we should not be in the business of funding evangelism and a single approach like that. I'd like the town clerk to review this decision, because we may make a decision democratically, but it can still be an illegal vote.
So my understanding of the debate that just happened, and members may correct me, was that there were members who put forward the view that the officer assessment was incorrect. And there are members here who have more detailed knowledge of these materials. And so those members put forward the view that the materials are not specifically promoting Christianity. So therefore it was appropriate to pass the funding. So the vote wasn't about overriding the council's policy not to promote Christianity. There were members who voted on their understanding was that the materials were appropriate within the council's policy. That's my understanding.
Sorry, through the chair.
Thank you. No, I think we'll move on now.
No member said that, Chair.
John,
I looked at the videos. I know what's in them.
Chairman, can we please?
I'm moving on to item 9 on the agenda. That's the Town Council awards and how we can present these in a COVID environment. I'd like to suggest perhaps, although it's very much down key, that because there were some prizes awarded the dog show out in the open by our mayor, the water refill thingy was sorted out by the mayor in the open air. Could we not do something similar? Anybody?
Yeah.
Councillor Stutchbury has a hand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's
Robin?
a reasonable proposal, Chairman. It makes it nice and simple. As long as we meet, as long as we don't have more than 6, we'll be fine, won't we?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. And if I think we may need to ensure that they're photographed and publicised and this sort of thing. But could that be arranged fairly simply, Paul and Geraldine?
I'm happy if the mayor's happy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
you
happy
happy with that, Paul?
Yeah.
Righty ho. Item 10 then. Buckingham Community Centre. I'm sorry, on the grants thing, we haven't got. I seem to have overskipped the grants review bit. Can we shift back to that?
Yeah.
There's some recommendations lurking in here somewhere. Not to find the buggers. Paul, what are the recommendations for the review?
They're straight off the contents page, so on page 3.
Yeah.
So it is. Okay. So page 3 of the report. And it goes on to page 4. They are the recommendations that the grants working group, or task and finish group, wasn't it? Have recommended. Any views on those?
Councillor Stutchbury has a hand.
Can I propose we agree them in all as they went through and were well discussed? The report was put together based upon the discussions of the councillors present, those who were able to discuss these matters at the various times, and move forward. Because not to move forward would mean we'd have to undo all that what was done in discussions, which all members had a right to attend.
I
if they
second
wish
that.
to. So
Yeah.
I propose we move.
Anybody disagree that we agree these recommendations en bloc? No? Okay, that's that. Job done then. Back to the community centre. Paul,
Sorry,
you
Chair,
want
can I
to
just-
speak on this?
Councillor
I
Harvey
just-
has a hand.
Sorry?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I just want to make a point of interest, because there's an important point that I think needs to be made with regards to 1.8 in that report. Is that the 4-year grants it says start in April 22, but the decision for that will start obviously in January 2022. is I think we need to just, I know Paul understands this, but I think it's important that members understand this. So the money in the new 4-year scheme will start rolling out in April 2022, but it'll be in the January and February meetings of the Resources Committee that the decisions will be made. That's all I wanted to say.
It was in the report.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unclear in the report, but that's all I'm making the point.
It's in line with our length, isn't it, for our 4-year councillor period? Yeah.
Right. I am going to move on now, come hell or high water, with the community centre issues. Paul, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, thank you. Just to highlight a couple of things to members. Obviously, you've heard a really helpful history from Councillor P. Collins at the outset of this discussion. Just to highlight to members again that currently we have a 99-year lease that has no break clauses in it. So the only way that lease would end would be by agreement, or if there was a breach by the Community Centre Association. And if there was a minor breach, or if we thought there was a breach, legally the first move would have to be to negotiate, and we would go and say, actually, we think you've had a breach, and could you please solve it and try and find an informal way forwards. So the items here, because members requested it, my overall understanding, and I've also copied members, or Nina copied members, a copy of the lease. So I know Patrick Collins mentioned that I've quoted bits of the lease in here, and I would ask members to look at the whole lease because that speaks for itself.
Thank you. Any other comments? No hands up. Okay.
Councillor Stutchbury has
we'll go to the recommendations then. Firstly, that we formally review the lease.
Robin had a hand. I'm going to sit back. The chairman's doing exactly what I was going to do. I'm going to sit back and let the chairman take the meeting.
I didn't hear that, Robin. You're much.
I'm going to. You're saying what I was going to say, Chairman. So I'm not going to.
Okay. Well, let's just take these recommendations then. Do we agree that the lease be formally reviewed and that the Community Hall Association are consulted in that review?
Suppose we do so.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Agreed.
Any disagreement?
Councillor Collins has a hand.
That was, sorry, who?
Councillor Collins has a hand.
Yes, Geraldine.
Well, you can formally review it, but as the lease is agreed, there's nothing you can do about it.
Point of information through the town clerk. At what point was that relevant to the meeting? In the sense that the town council is a sovereign body and can take any decisions it wishes to, and to say whether it can be progressed by a member of the council and on the community centre isn't really useful. We are able to review anything. What happens after that is entirely part of process, I would have thought.
Do I take it that we're agreed with the recommendations?
Yeah.
Including the
Agreed.
recommendation that we request the Community Hall Association to pay 50% of future capital costs, or approach them about that anyway. Is it? Yes, Geraldine.
Great.
Yeah.
Councillor Stutchbury's got a hand as well.
The very important thing in this recommendation.
Wait a minute, Geraldine. Robin, just a minute. Geraldine had her hand up.
I think Paddy explained why you can't ask the community centre for 50%. It is against the charitable laws to do that. And if you read the original lease, it entirely explains why. I think Paddy explained it very well, and somebody needs to go and look at it properly and thoroughly because it cannot be done.
Well, I've let you in twice, Geraldine, despite your declared interest as
I
a
know.
trustee.
I just
we know what you say, of course.
Look at it
Is
properly.
everybody happy? Can we have a show of hands then in that case of those who accept the 3 recommendations?
Yes, I just wish to speak
I'll call
on
for a vote, Robin.
Right, so those in favour, hands I can see in favour, Councillors Smith, O'Donoghue, Harvey, Hirons, Mordew, Duxbury and Newell. That's 7.
Are those against?
No hands against. Councillor Mahi against, but declared an interest, Councillor Mahi.
Any abstentions?
I'll vote.
Abstentions, Councillors Collins.
Well, no, that's not an abstention. You can't vote.
Oh,
can you?
I
oh
can't
yes,
vote
sorry.
no.
Sorry. Yeah.
So that's in favour then.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10.2 on the agenda to discuss the tapestry on display.
Chairman, could I just say that before we move on from that, with the important thing in there was
we
the
have
review of
moved.
the building.
We've moved on.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Now the tapestry. John, did you want to start this off? I know that you.
Mike, can I say something first?
Yes.
Right. So just to highlight to members, firstly, that this is on the agenda because we had a public question at council last week, and it was undertaken to write to the gentleman who asked the question with the council's view, and the council's never discussed or taken a view, so that's why the item's here on the agenda. I've point members to the lease you just discussed, which makes it clear that the town council doesn't have any responsibilities, quite specifically over decorations on the walls in the community centre. So whilst the council can take a view on anything, we don't have any powers in this matter.
Thank you. We might not have any powers to do anything about it, but I do know that some of us are a little bit upset that that picture is still on display in place of the photograph that the Mayor of Mouveau presented to us. Anybody else wish to comment?
Councillors Mordew, Duxbury, O'Donoghue, Harvey.
Okay, Howard.
Without sort of going against the town clerk, on page 12, under the 4th schedule, it quite clearly says that without distinction of sex or of political, religious or other opinions by the advancement of education. Basically, the community centre has to adhere to certain requirements. It should be held as a community asset for the benefit of the community. It's not an art gallery. It's nothing else but a community centre which everyone can use without fear of any religious or political significance. The problem for, if you like, the Twinning Association was that when the Mayor of Neukölln and Flun was coming here at the end of the year, which seems highly unlikely now, in Germany, the swastika is banned from display unless it can be considered as a work of art. Now, some might consider this as a work of art. However, I've no reason to believe they shouldn't be there and exhibited on a temporary basis. But the community centre is not an art gallery, and I think that it should be displayed together with the other tapestries somewhere else for if you want them on display for a long term. The only articles that could be allowed to be displayed are those given to the town. And the picture of the Mouveau Boulevard was given by the Mayor of Mouveau to Buckingham. And it is quite large, which is why the town council decided some years ago to display it in a small hall, which was subsequently renamed the Mouveau Hall.
Yeah.
Now, when we're on stay in Mouveau, you tend to learn of some of the atrocities that went on. This particular house where I stay was commandeered by the chief of police. It'd be wrong to go into it any further in this meeting, but I think that it'd be polite if we ask the Community Centre Association, i.e. the trustees, if they would kindly take it down, because technically they are in breach of the 4th schedule.
Thank you. Councillor Duxbury.
Thank you, Chairman. This has become almost very, well, it's contentious, but it shouldn't be contentious in the sense that there was a compromise put forward at one point, I remember, till corrected, where a poppy was placed upon the picture to cover the swastika over, and that was then subsequently removed. My view is that this is an asset which all members of the community, be them Jewish, Christian, of the Islamic faith, or of different nationalities within the town, should feel comfortable within the building. If you're comfortable with other people being uncomfortable, that isn't the right approach. So I think we have to not support it being up in our building, and it demonstrates exactly why we should be reviewing the lease. And I think it's unfair in another aspect, to be totally fair. I think some of the coverage of this and discussion of this is premised on individuals rather than the association. And I think that's a mistake. This is something that we have to do dispassionately. We have to do carefully and in the public interest. And I take note of what Councillor Moore just said, drawing us to Schedule 12. That's part of our agreement with them. And I think we should ask the town clerk to take them comments on advisement, because I looked at those earlier today and I weren't sure whether they gave us the weight that Councillor Mordew suggests they do. And I think we should take that on board. But no, we shouldn't leave them up, and we should ask, well, no, we can take them down, but we shouldn't be supporting them up, because I personally thinking my late grandfather, the only time he got to travel to Europe was in khaki, and he just about got home alive. And I'm not sure that he would want to be reminded of that gentleman now. And I know people in the community who are of the Jewish faith, and I haven't spoken, but this is quite offensive to them. And the reason they don't speak is they don't want to get social media is quite aggressive on this one way or the other. And it's really terrible, that. But I don't think we should premise on individuals in the Community Centre Management Committee on this decision, because they are not the people who make the decision, it's a committee. But I do think in the greater good, we should be seeing this removed. To end the conversation, it should find a settled place within the community where it's appropriate. What Councillor Mordew said, I think it's time's done. And if we can't have our German cousins to visit because of it, it rather indicates another reason, doesn't it?
Councillor Harvey.
Well, obviously, I'm on record for having said quite a lot about this already. I would support what both Councillor Mordew and Councillor Stutchbury have just said. And also, I know that there are other people of influence who have been very concerned about this as well, including our MP, including the Buckinghamshire Disability Service, including local Jewish representatives, many others, and indeed even on a Facebook poll, the majority were in favour of this particular panel being removed or replaced. But this is not a popularity contest. This is not about trying to vote for something or whatever in terms of how many people are lined up one way or the other. It's just about what's right. And to my mind, if you're creating a neutral and positive welcoming space, an image of Adolf Hitler and a swastika and a Messerschmitt are simply not appropriate. They don't need to be there. They really don't. And I'm not trying to cancel this art. I think the effort that went into producing it, all 10 panels, is quite staggering, and it deserves to be on show, but in a place that is appropriate, and a neutral community centre that should be welcoming everybody, regardless of religion, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of political viewpoint. It should be neutral. This simply has served its time, and it is really time for it to go.
Thank you, John. Totally agree with you. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Councillor Newell, Councillor Stutchbury.
Me, I've been waiting ages.
Yeah, I just wanted to fully support the words of Councillor Mordew, and he put it far better than I could. And I would love to see that photograph of the wonderful boulevard in Mouveau return to the wall. And yeah, thank you.
Was it Councillor O'Donoghue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, kind of echoing on what Robin said, which is what I was going to say about the management committee as a whole. It's a democratic process that they elected and voted, and I know that our mayor and one other member of the committee actually voted to not have them on the wall, but you know, it is democratic and they were outvoted. And I also know that our mayor, having been written in a post 10 times on social media, which is very unfortunate, has been in correspondence with the British Legion to try and find him a new home. And she's waiting on Mr. Cooper to find them a new home. But yeah, hopefully they will find somewhere else to go.
Could I perhaps suggest that if we're just waiting for the British Legion, who I believe own the set of tapestries, if we're waiting for them to find a new home, could they not be taken down and safely stored until such time as that home is found?
Councillor Collins and Councillor Stutchbury have their hands.
I don't know whether I'm allowed to speak as I have a vested interest.
I'm happy for you to speak, Geraldine, yes.
Okay. Well, I've had many meetings over the last few weeks with Andrew Cooper and Priscilla Durrance from the Jewish Society in Milton Keynes, and Greg Smith, who, funnily enough, didn't see Hitler's face. He saw the Superman sign. Now, Priscilla said she found no reason for yes, Jewish people might not like to see it, but legally it was not anti-Semitic. But I've been a bit naughty because I wanted to hear what everybody had to say. But I've listened to all the arguments over the last few weeks, and I've contacted the trustees 2 or 3 times to ask them to express again what they wanted to do. And in actual fact, the only tapestry in the community centre today is the WI one, which was there from when the community centre first opened. The tapestries had already been removed this morning.
Excellent.
By myself.
Well done, Geraldine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
In which case, as I was going to speak next, can I thank Geraldine very much for her conduct in doing that? Yeah. And I know this has been of quite personally difficult for her as chairman of the community centre, though I believe she didn't support the original decision. Correct. And I think we should record in a minute our thanks for her taking this action, which was in their bequest of the management committee to do so. And hopefully this can draw a line under it and we can move forward, because that's where we wish to be. And we should thank her for and the right to the community centre management committee, thanking them for their actions.
So shall we end the meeting there on a high note then, because I've got no chairman's announcements. Next meeting is the 9th of November. That's it. Good night, people. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Good
thank
night.
you, Chair.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.